Good morning. Today is Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. Ki yiyeh b'cha evyon, when there shall be among your people a poor person, a person in need, lo sa'ametzis levavchecha, don't harden your heart. This is from this week's Torah portion, the Parsha of Re'eh. Don't harden your heart when there is someone in need. Rather, ki pasoach tiftach es yadcha. You should open your hand. Pasoach tiftach, the word to open is repeated, meaning you should open your hand widely. You should open your hand generously. You should provide de machsaro, provide all that person needs. And what that includes is not only what they need financially, because people need a lot more than just financial sustenance. Just as important, maybe even more important, is to provide dignity and self-respect. And for that reason, there is a preference in Jewish law for giving tzedakah, for helping another anonymously. Because in that way, we try to avoid embarrassing the recipient. There's a famous story in the Talmud. I've shared it before, and it's very important to repeat this. It's in Masechta Ksuvos. The Talmud says that Mar Uqba, one of the great sages in the Talmud, we learn about him many, many, many times. Mar Uqba had the practice. There was a poor man who lived in his neighborhood, and then every morning, Mar Uqba would pass by early in the morning and put several coins in his doorway. But he made sure to do it very early in the morning so that the recipient would never see him, so as not to embarrass him. Because if you know who's giving you a handout and then you see them on the street, you might be embarrassed. So Mar Uqba had this practice every single day. Okay, this poor person certainly appreciates what he's receiving, but he would like to know who is his benefactor, who is it that's doing this wonderful thing. So he says to himself, I am going to find out. I know that it comes early in the morning. I'm going to find out who it is. So one day, this man got up very, very early, and he waited just inside his door. And when the person, he didn't know who it was at that point. So it was Mar Uqba, and excuse me, I didn't say, it was Mar Uqba and Mrs. Mar Uqba. It was a husband and wife. They did this together. It was just this one of their many acts of kindness and tzedakah. So they came together. So when the man inside the door hears somebody passing by, he opens the door to look at who it is. Mar Uqba and his wife hear the door opening, so they run away because they don't want to be identified. But this man wants to know who they are. So Mar Uqba and his wife run away, and they're determined not to let this person catch up and be able to identify them. This man really wants to know who it is, and so he runs after them. So Mar Uqba and his wife are running, this man is running after them, and Mar Uqba and his wife need a place to hide. But it's early in the morning, and there's nothing open, there's no where they're going to hide. And so as they're running, the only place that they can see to hide is in the hot oven of a bakery. Bakery is open very, very early in the morning, and they're already baking bread while people are still sleeping. And the oven is a gigantic oven, and it's a very hot oven, but it's the only place that there was to hide. So Mar Uqba and his wife ran into the hot oven. The poor person, of course, did not find them because he didn't think to look for a person inside a hot oven. And there was a miracle that occurred, and Mar Uqba and his wife were not burned. They were not hurt at all. And the Talmud says, For what reason did this miracle occur to them? What's the lesson that we're supposed to learn from this? And the Talmud says, a person should rather throw themselves into a fiery furnace than publicly embarrass their neighbor. Obviously, the Talmud doesn't mean that literally, but figuratively. A person should be willing to do whatever is necessary, even if it causes me some difficulty. Of course, not safety, obviously, but in order to prevent someone else being embarrassed. We often use the word tzedakah and translate it with the word charity. But it's not a very good translation, because the English word charity means when I give something that it's voluntary. I give a handout. Tzedakah, which comes from the root word tzedek, correct, right, righteous, just. Tzedakah is what is just. And we use this word in this context because this is what is necessary. It's what is tzedek, necessary, in order to create a just society. Now, this distinction between tzedakah and charity will help us to understand two very curious laws. Number one, in this week's Torah portion, Parsha Re'eh, the Jewish people are about to enter the land of Israel, and Moshe is reminding the people of when they get into Israel, how they're supposed to act, what they're supposed to do. And among the laws that Moshe reviews in our Torah portion, Moshe reminds them about the tithing gifts that the farmers will have when they start to raise crops in Israel. So, a farmer in Israel, when they gather their crops, they have certain obligations to whom to give. So, a farmer takes in their crop, 10% goes to the Levi. The Levium, the Levites, the tribe of Levi, they were the ones who were the teachers and spiritual leaders of the Jewish people. They also assisted in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem. And so they were public employees. So they had to be supported from the public. And the way the system was, is that every farmer had to set aside 10% of their crops and give it to a Levi. And in this way, all of the Levium were supported. It provided their income, their sustenance. Okay, 10% goes to the Levi. The remainder, approximately 2%, goes to the Kohen. Remember, the Kohanim, the priests, of course, they served in the Beit HaMikdash. They served offering the sacrifices, etc. They were also public employees. They had to be supported by the public. The Kohanim was a much smaller group. Remember, the Kohanim, the descendants of Aaron, were one small section of the overall tribe of Levi. So the farmers, every farmer, had to then give 2% to the Kohen. So the numbers worked out that the 10% to the Levi provided the needs of all the Levium, and the 2% to the Kohen provided all of the needs for the Kohanim, because it was a smaller number. All right. But there was more than one tithing, more than one 10%. Because the Torah tells us that when the farmer gives 10% to the Levi who received this is required to give 10% to the Kohen. It's called Trumas Meiser. From the Meiser, from the tithing that the Levi receives, 10% he gives to the Kohen. It's a very strange system, because if the point is that the 2% each farmer gives to the Kohen, to all the to support all the Kohanim, if 2% is not enough, why have part of it go through the Levi? Why not just make it, I don't know, 3% or 4%? I don't know how the math works out. But instead of the Levi taking 10% that he received and giving it to the Kohen, just alter, because it's all coming from the farmer. So just alter the amount so that the Kohen gets the exact amount that they need. It's more than 2%. Okay, so adjust it. That's question number one. Question number two is even more striking. This is the Rambam, Maimonides, in his Hilchos Matnas Aniyim, his laws of giving gifts to the poor. Now we're talking about those in need. The gifts to Kohen and Levi, that's their income. They're public employees. But now we're talking about just outright tzedakah to people who are poor, people who are in need. Says the Rambam, amazing rule. Afilu ani hamisparnes min tzedakah. Even if you have a poor person who is so poor that they are receiving money from others, that they depend on tzedakah they receive to sustain themselves, chayev litein tzedakah la'acher. That poor person is still required to give tzedakah themselves to somebody else. It seems very strange because, again, it's all coming from the giver. So it seems strange that if I have money and someone else does not have money, I should give them tzedakah, not only so that they can support themselves, but so they can have enough to give to somebody else. Let the other person come to me and I'll give them tzedakah. Rabbi Jonathan Sacks explains a fundamental concept which will answer both of these questions. He explains that giving is essential to human dignity. Essential to my ability to feel self-worth is my ability to share with others. Maybe less than a wealthy person, but to at least be able to give something, to share something. That is part of what makes me feel good. Tzedakah is not just about giving money. It is an obligation to ensure that everyone has that dignity. The dignity not only to be able to have food to eat, but the dignity to have the ability to give to another. And it is the dignity that the wealthy person gives to the impoverished person. That is the essential part of what makes it tzedakah. I'm required to give someone in need food to eat, and I am also required to give the wherewithal for that person to be able to give to others for their own dignity. That is part of my responsibility, not charity, but tzedakah, to give that feeling of dignity. And that's why, if I'm supposed to support the Levi, okay, I want to disclose, I am a Levi. So just to disclose, this is not a self, I'm not trying to enrich myself. Okay. So, but if the mitzvah is that I, the farmer, am supposed to support the Levi, I have to be giving enough. In the aggregate, the farmers in aggregate have to be giving enough so that the Levi and their family has enough food to support themselves, and I have to nourish the Levi's human need for dignity to be able to give to someone else. That's part of my obligation to support the Levi, and the same for tzedakah to a poor person. My obligation to nourish the poor person is to nourish their belly and to nourish their dignity. And in order for me to do that, I can't just give the amount of food they need to eat. I have to give a little bit more so that they can share with somebody else. The highest level of tzedakah, the Rambam Maimonides famously explains, is to help somebody get a job, to be able to support themselves. Now that's the highest level of tzedakah, but to be able to help somebody get a job, probably, even if I don't have to spend anything to do it, and it's called the highest level of tzedakah, I didn't spend anything. I put in a good word, I made a phone call, I sent a resume, I gave a reference, okay? None of those things cost me any money, because ultimately tzedakah is not about the money. Yes, of course, the money is important, but that's not the essence of tzedakah. The essence of tzedakah does not depend on how much you give. Yes, of course. For the person who is hungry, they need the money. Yes, I understand that. They need to be able to eat. And of course, everybody should give more tzedakah, not less. Okay. But the value of the mitzvah tzedakah does not depend on how much you give. You can be fulfilling the highest level of tzedakah without spending a penny. The value of the mitzvah tzedakah depends on being the kind of person you are supposed to be. A person who recognizes the need to nourish another by nourishing their belly as well as nourishing their self-esteem and their dignity. The value of the mitzvah of tzedakah is dependent on the kind of person you help another to be. To be a person who is not only a recipient, but has the dignity and self-worth that they can share something with someone else. Tzedakah helps others, but it also helps me focus on what and who I am supposed to be and who I am supposed to help you become. My friends, I wish you a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon in person.